Hello, welcome to Philosophy Roulette. This is number 211, where I read and review philosophy papers live on air, and you can come in and chat if you so wish. So, let's see, what do we have today on Phil Papers? New journal articles. I do take requests if people want me to read things, and we'll see. Sacrifice for Gain, Morality and Self-Interest in British Moral Philosophy from Hobbes to Bentham by Barthes. That's a review, but you know what, we'll take a look at what else is in mind. They've put some new papers out. Same with the PPQ. Bioethics. Do I feel like reading some science now? Not really. Let's go look at some Aristotelian philosophy. Who knows? You know, I'll click on some of the biology. I do love a little bit of philosophy biology myself. So let's see what we got in the forthcoming stuff. Let's get the newest of the hotness. All the new hotness in the philosophy. Let's find out. Ian Hacking. Why is there philosophy of mathematics at all? What type of question is that? There's philosophy of everything. You can just like pre-pen philosophy too. Like philosophy of. There's philosophy of all the things. What kind of question is that, Ian Hacking? Of course, I'd probably want to read that book, so I'm just being silly. So these are reviews. Let's see. Do we have page numbers? Human being bodily. Okay, this is a review. Oh, and that's the only one that has the page numbers on it. Shucks. Yeah, you see. Nothing else does it. So let's see real quick if we have anything with page numbers here that's of non-crazy length. So we've got this one, categories review, think about being, review. Clayton Littlejohn. I've read a nice paper by Clayton Littlejohn before. Hey, Semiotics, how are you today? Just trying to find something to read. If you have a preference, you let me know. Spirit of Trust. Alright, so we've got a ton of reviews that Mind has put out. So, you know, I'm getting tired of reading these reviews. Let's see. And I think I've taken a look at this stuff, so they haven't put anything, nothing with, I'm going to keep looking. Alright, so nothing from Mind, because I've seen those papers before. Alright, so let's see what we got next. I'm thinking of doing some, different streams. I mean, not my normal Minesweeper and philosophy. Might do a fitness stream. So I spent all day enabling a text to speech, so I didn't have to be like right here. I'd like to do some more fun stuff online because we're all been stuck, you know, in front of the computers. So, well, I'm not gonna do text to speech right now, but yeah, you just if you have an opinion, you let me know, and I'll take a look. Let's see. No page numbers on PPQ stuff. Let's see about over here. Kantian cognitivism. That's 14 pages. Maybe it'll... Well, let's see if it's available. Toward a hybrid account of luck. Did I read this? I might have, because I read a few papers on luck. Luck is an interesting topic, because it deals with probability, how people feel about things, and so stuff like that. We're getting to DOI. Okay, cool. I'll take a look. I mean, if it's like 40 pages, I ain't reading it, but like, I'll consider it under that, so like 30 maybe. I see not only a Madonna, but a hole in the pictures. Was that some aesthetics? That could be cool. Knowledge and Truth, a Skeptical Challenge. I think I've read this. John Turry, I remember that name. So, okay, so we've got nothing immediately available, but let's find out. Find on Scholar. Okay. We have a suggestion from chat. So. The Smile of the Sign, Semiotics. Oh, you have your name Semiotics in it. Barthes, Baudrillar, Boutour, and Levi-Strauss. Let's see, do I have access to this? Not necessarily, but yeah, I have no login right here, but that does not mean I can't get a hold of this. Let's see how long it is actually. Okay, so we're talking like 16 pages. That's kind of reasonable. Let's see if what Phil Papers has to say about this. If my internet is going to work. The smile of the sign. Maybe I should put fewer words in here. These are, like, these are, no, the smile. Oh man, why isn't this not showing up in Phil Papers? Where are we? What journal is this? Studies in Travel Writing. Oh, no wonder. It's just maybe not my normal thing. Okay, so you know what we're gonna do real fast. Alright, no one can see what I'm gonna do right here. It's because it's completely evil, and no one should ever go to one of these evil websites where you can download. Well, I'm gonna go find some way to get access. Oh no. Let's see what happens. Ugh, this is not even loading. Why is my internet so slow all of a sudden? I'm like, the best nuggets of philosophy are often far outside what philosophy journals themselves are covering. That is sadly very true. Let's see if this works better. Okay, so I'll get a better paper for you next time. I can do the hunting for it. Oh, don't worry. What happened? Oh my god. Did I just somehow find the paper on my computer? I think I might have. Oh, there it is. What do you know? I found it. Don't ask how. Not allowed to say. I'm going to get my self kicked off the air if I tell you how. But that's okay. So we have The Smile of the Sign, Semiotics and Travel Writing in Barthes, Baudrillar, Boutour, and Lévi-Strauss. So we're going to be doing just some philosophy from the writing side. So there's more philosophy of literature here. So don't you worry about semiotics. We're good to go. So we've got 19 pages, which is a little bit longer than I normally read. But, you know, the words are big here. So The Smile of the Sign, Semiotics, Travel Writing in Barthes, Baudrillar, Boutour, and Lévi-Strauss. I love when that happens. Isn't that fun? Okay, so let me just update the stream real quick. So there we go. Yeah. Is this gonna fit here or no? No, let's just leave it like that. So that's there. Yeah, and for those who are interested in at least coming to this page, there we go. So you can at least get a hold of this if you are so interested. So, okay, and we're off. David Scott. I like David Scott. It's a name I can actually pronounce. At least I'm not confused about how to pronounce it. I can pronounce all of them. But alright, here we go. Travel writers are sign readers in many senses of the word. For when they encounter the other, they are faced with an episteme, in which is at stake not only the strangeness to the outsider of the sign itself, but also the nature of its relation to its object. It is here that the various possible conceptions of the sign and the ways that signs work come into question. For the post-Enlightenment European, signs are primarily perceived as arbitrary symbols, but they can also, in certain circumstances, such as in art or religion, be perceived as being motivated by or having, as Peirce would say, a real connection with their object. Furthermore, in so-called primitive societies, as indeed in some areas of pre-Renaissance European culture, signs can also be understood in certain circumstances or through exceptional processes such as exorcism and magic to act on or modify their object. It is the business of ethnography to study in a given culture both the how and the what of semiosis, not only the way signs interact, but also the way they may be understood from a native perspective to act on and transform the real. Travel writing, on the other hand, while often operating within a project broadly analogous to that of ethnography, focuses more on how the other or a different episteme is experienced by the individual consciousness. As in ethnology, this involves a questioning of the way meaning is produced, a widening of the understanding of the various ways signs may be understood to work. But for the traveler, the focus is above all on alienating or stimulating impact, such readjustments. I was like, readjustments? What word is readjustments? Readjustments produce in experience. Such stimulation characterizes the encounter with what is often perceived by the traveler to be a more integral and analogical world in the Foucauldian sense, that is, one in which there are more and different ways in which science can be understood to work, and one which becomes correspondingly open to different kinds of interpretation. So what are we doing here? So it looks like we're trying to understand how, by dealing with the signs of different cultures, we're going to have a different relationship to knowledge because they have some sort of different sort of understanding of things. So we've got a knowledge, that's what episteme is, and then we've got the way signs work in terms of that, and then this is going to be looked at through, in some sense, a forced experience in travel. So you're going to force other people's signs on yourself, basically. So that's kind of what travel writing is to get outside your normal. So you're sort of forcing an epistemology onto you. So it's a pragmatic understanding of epistemology here is what we're getting at, which is squarely in philosophy. It's just the pragmatics of epistemology is not normally discussed in mainstream thought because it's sort of a practical question. So let's see what we get. More importantly, semiotics says, and more importantly, the fact that they are different is what brings your attention to, so that you can notice that you have signs of your own in the first place. Yes, that's part of the whole sort of like, that's kind of the whole part and parcel. You're getting out of yourself, and so you can see yourself, your own signs better, you understand the signs you're using better in relation to the other ones, because if you're just stuck in your daily life, you sort of tend not to understand anything because you just get stuck there. Okay, this article adopts a double approach to these two perspectives on other science systems. In doing so, it focuses on a significant section of modern French travel writing, which reveals a conscious concern with ethnography or sociological as well as more general aspects of travel experience and writing. A literature, in other words, in which the individual's experience as marked by travel is integrated into a theoretical reflection worked out in semiotics, ethnographic, or sociological terms. Excuse me. So the text by Lévi-Strauss, Barthes, Baudrillar, and Boutour studied here are all characterized by a primary concern in the travel context, with signs in themselves and how they produce meaning, as well as with the discovery of specific cultural meanings they may contain and which travel opens up to them. It's that you're reading it that is the magic. Okay, so it's the interaction. It doesn't matter what the reading is, but it's that you're doing it to begin with. Okay, we'll see how this goes. In the first part of what follows, the sign as perceived by the native of the target culture will be investigated, in particular the degree to which consciousness of the sign is born when a competing semiotic system interrupts a so-called primitive or non-Western episteme. This implies a primarily ethnographic perspective in which the confrontation of radically different science systems is observed. Such an angle is provided by Lévi-Strauss. See, now I can't read anymore because I don't know how to say things. Tristis Tropiques, in which ethnography, ethnology, and autobiographical reflection are closely bound up with each other. Derrida, referring to the text as, I'm not reading French, the second and larger part investigates some of the ways in which science systems are perceived from the outside by Western travelers and the strategies they employ to enrich their understanding of the semiotic process, with the aim of maintaining as far as possible the promise of the sign and so the illusion of a more integral cultural system. In the text by Barthes, Baudrillar, and Boutour studied here, I used the recurrent image of the smile as a metaphor for the sign to clarify elements of the semiotic play in the sign itself before any concern for specific meaning arises. For the smiling sign is one that enters not only into a functional relationship with its reader or interpretant, but also into a relationship of convivence involving play on intellectual, sensual, and aesthetic and other levels. And there is a part of like smiles that really sort of plays out nowadays because we get all these emoticons and there's a lot of smiles. So we've got emoticons and emojis, and smiles are ubiquitous. So that is sort of an interesting. Wittgenstein writes on smiles. Everyone has to sort of figure out what the sign of a smile is. So, or the smile of the sign is. The most powerful sign systems are those involve writing. This is not only because writing enables knowledge to be stored, remembered, elaborated, and disseminated widely, but also because it can be used as an instrument of exploitation and control. The following well-known passage of Tristes Tropiques illustrates this well. As one might expect, the Nambiquara don't know how to write. As with the Caduvio, I nevertheless handed out sheets of paper and pencils with which they did nothing at first. Then one day I saw them all occupied in tracing wavy horizontal lines across the paper. What were they doing? I had to accept the evidence. They were writing. For the most part, their efforts stopped there, but their chief realized there was more to it than that. He alone seemed to have realized the function of writing. So he asked me for a notepad with which we were both equipped when we were working together. He did not communicate to me verbally the information that I asked of him, but traced on the paper wavy lines that he then passed to me, as if I should in this way read his reply. He himself was in part a dupe to his own play acting. Each time that his hand completed a line, he examined it anxiously as if its meaning were about to spring forth, and his face expressed the same disillusion every time. But this wouldn't do. It was tacitly agreed between us that his mumbo-jumbo contained a meaning that I pretended to decipher. His verbal commentary followed almost immediately, obviating any necessity on my part to ask for further clarification. Semiotics says, it occurs to me that if a smile is some universal sign that all human being carries around with them, there would be an advantage in knowing how to project facial expressions that manipulate others. That might be a cultural meme that's important to attend to, especially now. It's really hard. Even the smile can be, like a mean smile. Like, there's like happy smiles, and then there's like sort of cruel smiles. So we're complicated things. But that's in some sense a lot more is communicated by a smile than just the word smile. And that in some reason is why we use emojis so much, and that's why Twitch has like all these things, because you can seemingly communicate way more with a little picture than you can with just a word or two alone, usually. So it's of course you can manipulate people with your actions, but the smile in itself, it still needs to be connected to some system. So, continuing. The Nambiquara chief then proceeds to give a demonstration of his supposed newfound skill in writing to his assembled tribesmen and a related claim by feigning to read from a long list of scribble an inventory of goods for exchange between Levi-Strauss and the tribe. Before the Nambiquara chief's action, as observed by Levi-Strauss, it may be assumed that for members of the Nambiquara and other so-called primitive tribes, signs were believed to have real connection with their object. To possess the sign is to possess the thing to which it refers. Well, of course, Trump, but the guy's he understands the people he's talking to. There's already it's not just the smile. Trump is a pretty good salesman. That's what he does. That's his chief skill, is marketing and sales. And he's not even that good at the sales. I'll just say just the marketing. So it's like he does understand that. Yeah. And other people were better. Trump is just good at riling up the crowd, is basically what he's good at. And that's what you need for politics nowadays anyway, so. But just the smile alone does not, Trump's smile is not that good. You'll notice he doesn't crack jokes. He doesn't have a sense of humor. So it's like, he needs more than the smile. He needs, the bravado. That's kind of what he sells. He doesn't sell, a smile. Other people do that. Other people, sell things with smiles way better. Yeah. So, in misappropriating the written sign, I don't know enough about Mussolini, to tell you the truth. I should look into, what he was up to. Now, here's the other thing, what's going on right here. To possess the sign is to possess the thing to which it refers. Now, that is a pretty strong, statement here. Signs were believed to have real connection with their object. To possess a sign is to possess the thing to which it refers. Now, a real connection with an object is not to have the object itself. It has a connection to it. So this is a sort of a strong claim right here. If I hand you a piece of written paper, did you actually get the goods that were listed on the paper, or did you just get the piece of paper with the list of goods? So the sign is not to possess the list of goods, but the writing I mean, if you have the writing on the paper, then yes. Then, of course, you got the sign is the object itself. No, Trump doesn't make jokes, because his jokes are terrible when he makes them. Trump says, like, sort of weird things that he thinks are provocative. I don't think he makes jokes. I think he makes provocations, really. I've never heard, like, him crack a joke. And I've heard other people say this, the ones that know him. He doesn't really crack jokes. He makes provocations. So, I don't think he's a very funny person. Like, just, he doesn't crack... Yeah, well, Trump does like trying to be fascist. I mean, but when he says stuff like that, it's not funny. He's not cracking jokes. Like, when he said that stupid stuff about, like, bleach and, like, UV rays that kill the virus, and then he was trying to pass off, like, a joke, like, that wasn't even remotely funny or a joke. And he did that a bunch of times. So I don't think he understands. Alright, so back to the sign thing, though. To possess the sign is to possess the thing to which it refers. Now, that only really makes a difference if you're passing signs back and forth, like in writing. So I'm not entirely sure about this claim right here. It's okay in some sense because there is some sense in which this is the case, but it's a very strong statement, a claim right there. So in misappropriating the written sign system of the white ethnographer, the Mbikwara chief might be imagined by his fellow to be appropriating the object attached to the borrowed signs, or at least that his pretended grasp of the new instrument empowered him to assure the transfer of objects from the other to the native community, or between native communities and vice versa, in exchange that was both symbolic and real. In fact, though, the Mbikwara's chief actions may have been, and this is what Levi-Strauss seems to imply, also a function of an obscure realization of the power of the written sign as a sign, in particular in that, by its very agency, regardless of its content, of which he has only a hazy understanding. No, Mussolini was fascist. Trump is a wannabe fascist. It offers possibility of action different from or alternative to those already operative in his native system. Yeah, so at least here the author has sort of backed up slightly. It's not that the chief really thought the goods were the paper. It's that the chief understood that the paper represented the transfer of goods, which is fine. That's a smart thing. Okay. Semiotics says, joke fail, but good point with Trump. Now I have to think about the philosophy of comedy again for a while. Yeah, I've thought about the philosophy of comedy actually a lot. It gets into some really deep things because, comedy and truth are often quite aligned. So, like, why are we laughing at things? Like, well, sometimes they're true, sometimes they're sad, but, like, they all have meaning to us. So, you have to, if you're trying to figure out what a reference is, like, how do you pick out, like, a specific referent, and then you get yourself into problems of, like, how do we all get jokes? What is it to get a joke? Why did we pick out the same referent? And things like that. So, yeah, we'll get back to that some other time. An office probably different alternatives already operative in his native system. Yeah, so the chief understood that the paper represented represented the potential transfer of goods. Okay. However, the dawning realization that the link between the word and object is not necessary or real may be one cause of the subsequent unease felt by the Mbikwara tribesmen, and indeed may have been a factor in the subsequent demotion of the chief who had, in this way, misappropriated Western writing. Yeah, because he was faking it. So they understand, and the people understood that he didn't know. Henri Michaud's graphic work, such as that shown in Figure 1, taken from Par la Voix de... I can't read French, I apologize, seems to reveal on one level an intuitive grasp of what was at stake in this kind of motivated scribble that the Mbikwara chief was attempting to reproduce, a form of a sign that acted on the objects to which it was presumed to refer in a new and mysterious way, the potential functional efficacy of which was recognized even if the actual content of the sign was obscure. So it's like this sort of almost writing, like it kind of gets close to what we would understand looks like a text of one of our Western languages. There's like videos out there of like people speaking basically in what English sounds like to them. So these are people who do not speak English, but like I think it was from like some Scandinavian country or something, and they probably did speak English, but they were saying words that sounded very English-like, but of course they were meaningless. And so it's kind of like that's what's going on here. They're doing stuff that they know has meaning, and they're like pretending they're in conversation with us, but of course they also know that they're not saying actual words. And this relates to things like the Jabberwocky and words like what was like the frode and like some twibble and all those words that sort of sound like they have meaning to us, but they don't quite. And so we sort of imbue them with a meaning, even though we know that they don't actually have relation to any object. They don't have a referent. A fascination with the indexical or iconic signs constitutes a significant part of European travelers' nostalgia for an analogical world in which signs are or may be believed to be attached in this way to their objects. Yeah, I get annoyed about nostalgia. Yeah, like, this is just some sort of, we want things to be easier. We could just want what we say actually has meaning. But, like, maybe that's part of the traveler's, the allure of traveling. Is like, you can go find something real one day out in the world, as if other people's lives are somehow make more sense than ours. As a result, the question of the sign's decipherability becomes, from the 19th century, central to many European travel texts. If the sign is to reawaken a magical sense of the presence or at least the imminence of the object, it must offer some of the latter's resistance. And, like the object, it must be perceived as being part of the real, or at least contiguous with it, having a sensuous presence or even beauty in its own right. This is reflected in the travel writer's concern with a signifier, that part of the sign that confirms its semiotic status, but which is at the same time perceptible without the corresponding signified necessarily being identified, and meaning thus adduced. The travel writer's aim often becomes thus to keep open as long as possible the dynamic potential of the object before the interpretant ascribes immediacy and thus intelligibility to it. In some cases, such as the Michaud of the purely graphic text to which I have just referred, the sign will remain ultimately indecipherable, allowing the reader to experience both the primitive first confrontation with graphic signs and the untutored Westerner's first encounter with Far Eastern or Pacific ideographic systems. Oh yeah, if anyone else is out there watching, feel free to ask questions. Please let me know. I will try to explain it, but this is my first time reading it too. Hey Bubba Bloop, what's up? We're reading something on travel writing and signs. So, this is the smile of the sign, semiotics, travel, and writing according to these authors. And basically, this is a paper on semiotics, so how do we understand relations between like what we know and what other people know? So it's like when you go to some other culture, how do you start to sort of figure out the meaning in, a culture that's not your own? And why do we like that in terms of like travel writing? What do we think is special? What are we getting out of that? And so that's kind of what this paper is on. The encounter with a different kind of knowledge and what the sort of like important symbolism there in the signs, not the symbolism, but the semiotics, the sign relations can mean to us. So, feel free to ask questions, of course. In human culture, Levi-Strauss and structuralist anthropology tell us the symbolic precedes the real. It becomes increasingly the aim of later 20th century travel writers to rediscover this precedence in the difference or other they encounter on their travels. It is therefore in the symbolic that Roland Barthes, in The Empire of Signs, sets out to experience difference without it being semiotized or rationalized into a meaning that can be grasped in Western terms. Barthes' aim becomes, as the following passage makes clear, to find and to experience the other in terms of signs and to understand how sign systems reconstruct the real. Who has not dreamed of a foreign, strange language, and yet of not understanding it, of perceiving difference in it without this difference ever being attenuated by the superficial associability of language, communication, or vulgarity, of becoming acquainted with the shortcomings of our own language positively refracted in that of another, of learning the system of what was hitherto inconceivable, of undoing our real according to the effect real according to the effect of the other ways of seeing, other syntaxes, of discovering unheard of positions in the enunciating subject, of resituating our topological bearings, in a word, of entering into the untranslatable so that we experience its shock without ever fully absorbing it, until the whole of Western culture seems to tremor and the rights of the paternal language to shake their foundations. That native language that our fathers handed down to us and which makes us in our turn fathers and proprietors of a culture which history has the effect of transforming into nature. Semiotics, this, oh my god, so many ways to read this and how it sneaks into ambiguities. Oh, that's a question mark, I mean an answer. Yeah, you know what's funny about this? You start reading, academic writing is just so painful mostly. So I was reading this stuff, and it's okay. And then you get to read the Roland Barthes, and it's just like, it flows so much better. And nothing on David Scott, but it's like Roland Barthes is of course not writing an academic paper in this, but it's just so much. It's a lot more fun to read. Like, I'm actually, David Scott's doing, actually, I'd say, a pretty good job. But still. Yeah, so, this, I mean, I like this point that, in some sense, you need to not understand it. You can't actually ever get to the, where is the, you want to avoid the superficial sociability of language communication. You don't ever want to actually make it, like, rational to yourself, because then it loses its power, then you just can take it on. And so this is sort of you have to always keep it somehow far into yourself. You can't rationalize it. Okay. Barthes is fully conscious of the ethnographic and linguistic semiotic issues at stake in the exploration of a radically foreign culture. This awareness is evidenced in his concern with the structure of the sign, the necessity of grasping the underlying system or episteme supporting a given culture, and the importance of language as a major structuring element in cultural expression. Barthes refers, for example, to Worf's work on language of North American Indians and to Granit's studies of Chinese. He is also aware, from the point of view of the travel writer, of the value of personal experience of exotic sign systems and the fascination they exert before they are fully analyzed and understood. As a result, he focuses on the signifier, privileging the signs of Japan over the real Japan, making it clear from the start that for him Japan is a quasi-fictitious semiotic system. For Barthes, then, Japan offers an opportunity to experience cultural difference on a more abstract or theoretical level, one on which the operations of signs, as much as their content, are of chief concern. Do I know Barthes? Not really. I listened to some lectures where his stuff got mentioned quite a bit. So I do not know. I know a little bit about Barthes. I do not actually know his work. No, it's outside my what I normally read. So but I do have a concern with rhetoric, and so Barthes is important for rhetoric, and I touched upon some of his stuff that when I was looking at rhetoric stuff. Yeah, so there's a whole thing. It's the sort of like, and you get this in Baudrillar a lot, it's not the real thing that's happened, it's something else that's going on that makes the meaning important to us. So the signs of Japan over the real Japan, because real life is always messy and painful and annoying, and well, it's great too, but like, once you get into the weeds of it, then it's like an everyday Japan. But when it's still just sort of like this abstract sign system, then it can be sort of different and exciting. So, yeah. Japanese culture is able to lend itself to such an in case you wait, let me get to this comment first. In case you didn't know, almost everything in Star Trek and Star Trek: The Next Generation, don't even know what that word, onomastically is from the world of the dominant players in the concept of semiotics like Worf. Oh, okay. I did not know that. That's kind of interesting. Should. I mean, I'm not a big Trekkie, but like I have watched a bunch of Star Trek stuff just because it's pop culture and it's fun. But I did not know where it was coming from. Okay, Japanese culture is able to lend itself to such an analysis because of the relative fragility of its physical reality and the disproportionate importance of its sign markings. In short, for Barthes, in Japan, reality becomes a mere support for the sign, one which French meaning is experienced is not as profound revelation in three-dimensional space, but as a series of flickers against papery, semi-transparent, and insubstantial surface. Jean-Luc Godard is Picard. Okay, I did not. That's funny. It's in the semiotics. The Japanese fascination with and skill in handling paper is crucial here, for paper is used in Japan as a primary material in building, decorating clothing, and cooking, as well as in painting and writing. Its primary role in the latter as a support for science through contagion thus also seem to affect the other uses to which it is put, so that Japanese culture as a whole appears to Barthes as a fragile text to be read. For Barthes, Japanese culture becomes a diagram of the semiotic process, one whose heuristic value in semiotic terms is enhanced by the void underlying it. Public places are a series of instantaneous events that achieve noteworthiness in such a sudden flash that the sign is abolished before any signified has had time to take. One would say that some sort of centuries-old contrivance enabled a landscape or spectacle to appear as a pure signifying surface, abruptly empty like a sudden break. Empire of signs, perhaps, to the extent that these signs are empty and that the ritual governing them presupposes no deity. Okay. Thank you. Learned some. Can I get a layman's summarization of what this paper is saying? Yeah, so this is, like I said, the smile of the sign, and the semiotics of travel. So the basic is that when you travel, you're getting yourself out of yourself, like you're getting out of your like everyday life. And so when you get yourself out of the everyday life, what is that getting out? Sorry, hike to Bob. What is that getting out of the everyday life? And so when you're trying to get yourself out of the everyday life, what is it to be out of it? It's to get yourself into some sort of system that you are not comfortable with. And that's the semiotics of science. So semiotics is just a fancy word for just like complicated relation between signs. And so this is basically, how are we to understand what happens when we go to a place and we're sort of like in Japan and everything's sort of mysterious to us, and like everything's made out of paper because we don't build with paper in the West, they build with paper in Japan. So it's like how all of a sudden things are written in places that they aren't written in the West. They're written like on walls because it's on paper, and it's like different things happen. And so what happens is you are let's see. Sudden flash that the sign is abolished before any signified has any time to take. So what happens is you go to a place and you're trying to figure out what's going on, but it's just so complicated that there is any sort of like, it's so different from you that you can't get any understanding of like what the whole point is. Like you're going to this foreign place and you don't understand what is going on when you go to like their market. It's got too many signs, you can't read any of them. And so that sort of complicated grouping of symbols means nothing to you, but you understand that there's something going on there. So you understand that there's like knowledge and things to be learned, but you can't actually, it doesn't take to you. Like you don't seem to get the point. And the author here, Barthes, is saying that's very powerful, that you can go and understand this sort of like complex humanity without actually knowing what's going on. And so that's kind of what the whole point is in this paper, I think, is that how do we understand this experience of travel writing to explain the sort of experience where we understand that all this knowledge in life is happening, but we don't quite what the power of that is to us. Okay, so continuing. Ooh, I like this paper because it has pictures. I always like pictures. The fascination of the haiku is exemplary here. For Barthes, the haiku is an arrangement of words or signs in which signifiers are indeed attached to signified, but in relation that shares little of the motivating dynamic governing meaning construction in Western science systems. Alright, what is the paper trying to get at, or is this talking about it? I don't know, I'm just halfway through at the moment, bubble bloop, but we'll get there. I'm not exactly sure, this is not my area, so we'll find out. And since Semiotics says, when you have a second, please revisit definitions of semiotics as a topic, but I want to yield to the layman summary. Yeah, I haven't thought about the definition of semiotics as a topic. It's technically the science of signs and how they relate to each other. Yeah, so yeah, this is my first read through, so I don't know. But yeah, I don't actually know what the contemporary definition is at the moment. Literally the most I read was Peirce back in the day, And so I saw semiotics in terms of like that definition, and I haven't really studied much of it after that. So this is, yeah. But like I have some idea what's going on. But like it's just sort of I have some idea of what's going on in semiotics, but it's only just through like, it getting mentioned here and there. And so I have some clue what they're talking about. Okay, so yeah, so the haiku here is exemplary because we don't do haiku in the West for some reason. I don't know why they'd say that, but we do now, but we'll see. For what is at stake in the haiku is the possibility of sense, not depth of meaning. That's unfair. Why can't there be depth of meaning in haiku? And whatever. Such writing does not propose messages, rather is created the impression that any sense or meaning which is deduced comes as an accident, as a side effect, or is simply, as Barthes put it, exempted. Meaning is merely one element in the overall aesthetic enjoyment offered by the text, a mere supplement to the attractiveness of the signifier as form, as in the Japanese calligraphic character itself, figure 2, which literally signifies nothing. No, the definition of that one is wrong. Oh, I'm sorry. Okay, I got the definition wrong. I apologize then. Thank you. Okay. Alright, so this is the symbol for nothing, but it seems kind of complicated. In all its lightness and spatial airiness. Yeah, you see, but I don't quite like this. I mean, this is imposing our Western opinions on what this symbol means. For all I know, in like Japanese culture, this is a heavy sign, so I don't know about that. Intellectual enjoyment of the haiku is a function not of any idea, argument, or theory that the haiku text might itself propose, but precisely in the way any such possibilities seem to be shut out. In this way, the art of the haiku is the art of manipulating the potential of signs without necessarily fully realizing it, the art of using language without necessarily stimulating thought in the Western understanding of the word. The following text by Bateau, Japanese master of the haiku, as cited by Barthes, exemplifies the process. Semiotics like semiotics, that's right. How admirable is he who does not think how ephemeral life is on seeing a lightning flash. Nice haiku. For Barthes, the haiku, as an exercise in exemption of sense, is a literary manifestation of Zen Buddhism that he sees as providing a basic component of the episteme underlying Japanese thinking. The philosophy of Zen deeply disturbs the logical categories operative in Western thinking. The Buddhist recommendation to avoid assertion, negation, ambiguity, and ambivalence has the effect, as Barthes notes, of destroying the linguistic paradigm as constructed by the structural linguistics a, non-a, ni-a, ni, non-a. Alright. So these are like a, not a, and then like other different sort of contradictories. If Buddhism is proposing such a radical blockage of sense-making structures, what possibilities of meaning remain? As an alternative, Buddhist teaching proposes a meditation on the sign using the cone or some other fragment of text, not to resolve it as if it had meaning, nor even to notice its absurdity, which is still meaning of sorts, but to chew it over until there is nothing left to chew. The aim of this is to reflect on the sign as sign, not as meaning, but as operation. All right, more French I don't read. So this is a process theory. So keep processing in some sense. You're not going to ever get to the referent. You're not going to get to the meaning. You're just going to keep sort of mulling it over. And that's kind of what is going on with these things. You're not supposed to resolve it as if it had a meaning, or not even to conclude that it's absurd, but just to keep thinking on this sort of these ideas. And in some sense, that is the way to understand them, is to just continue to mull them over. For Barthes, then, the value of East-West comparisons is not just knowledge of difference, but more vitally a confrontation of epistemes as revealed in different strategies of symbolization. Correspondingly, travel writing finds its vocation as a genre between semiotics and anthropology, which temporarily suspends itself in the fissure of the symbolic, momentarily inhabiting the space between sign and object, signifier and signified, experiencing it as pure difference. Barthes achieved this aim in The Empire of Signs not only in the way on the level of theory, he places it lucidly in its semiotic and anthropological context. So we've got sign, signifier, signification, yielding significance. Yeah, that's definitely a better way of putting stuff. But yeah, you've got a technical understanding of how signs relate to each other's. So you've got the sign, what's signified by the sign, so the signifier and the signification, and then what the ending meaning, the significance is. But yeah, like I said, this is my understanding of like semiotics is not formal training; it's just encountering it. So I am gonna get things wrong. Anywho, so he achieved this on the level of theory. He places lucidly in its semiotic and anthropological context, but also in the way on the level of writing as practice. He tries to recreate the confrontation of symbolics to provoke comparison and contrast of different symbolizing systems. Thus, Barthes' text itself offers a profusion of different signifiers in which the heterogeneous mixture of French and Japanese text, fragments of Japanese calligraphy and characters, paintings, photographs, drawings, maps, and other symbolic forms of representation leads the reader in different ways to confront the gap between sign and object, between signifier and signified, and between sign systems. Yeah, it's in your head, that's right. In this way, Barthes' text is in itself becomes the fictitious Japan its author announces his intention to explore at the beginning of the book. Its pages a series of fissures which cut up and fragment in various ways the symbolic systems that is their ultimate object. The final clue to the signifying process operative within it are the photographs which, like chiasmus, open and close the volume. Both show a virtually identical image of a young Japanese actor. The difference between them is minimal. Indeed, they are identical. Well, I don't know what that French means. In other words, they represent the smile of the sign, there being, as in Zen interpretation of the sign, nothing other to grasp. And as Barthes says in the book's last words, which immediately precede the photograph's second appearance, and in which even typography as signifier changes from its italics to the handwritten script. So, okay, so this is, I guess, at the beginning, and this one's at the end with the slight smile there. Just the littlest smile. So that you get from the beginning to the end, and you don't quite know how to interpret it. So, interesting. The smile. Okay, so that's kind of what Bart's point was. This is sort of the wrap up of this section. This is a random article I'm reading on just a random article about like what it is to do travel writing. Semiotics says the idea is we understand everything from logic to a Tex Amex menu in Tex. I'm just go Tex Mex, not Tex Amex, because that'd be very strange to have a credit card menu. This is also the philosophy of science. There are some semioticians that get balls deep in that one. Yeah, that's true. So it kind of sounds like they're talking about a specific piece that I understand that incorrectly. No, the strategy of this paper is that the author is actually focusing on a few different examples. So this was one of the Barthes work on Japan is one of the examples that the this paper is using to make their point. So, like, you can't see these particles at all, though. What is it that makes you say that you see them? Yeah, so if you're going to do the philosophy of science, how do we actually talk about things that we can't see? We have to use our everyday sort of structures to talk about stuff like we can't see. So that's one of the applications of this stuff. Yeah, so if you actually, Bubba Bloop, we're going to turn right now to a different author. So that's actually what happened. This is like the first section, and then we're going to go to another section right now. So that's what's going to happen. The structure of this article, as I was saying before, is they're trying to make their point through a series of examples. And so this like we're going to have an example here, example here, example here, in different by different authors to show what the author wants about the travel writing. That, as we were saying before, that there's this sort of like complex relation between signs, and that sort of has power in a certain way. Okay, so continuing, but feel free to keep asking questions. The smile that Jean Baudrillar encounters in the United States, like the one Barthes meets in Japan, can also be read as a symbol of the sign. Autoprophetic smile, like all publicity signs, smile You will be smiled at in return. Smile to show how transparent, how candid you are. Smile if you have nothing to say. Certainly never hide that you have nothing to say or that you are indifferent to others. Let the void, the profound indifference in your smile appear spontaneously. Make a gift to others of this void, this indifference. Light up your face to a 0 degree of pleasure or joy. Smile, smile. Even if they lack identity, Americans have perfect teeth. Well, thank you so much, Baudrillard. If for post-structuralist sociologist semioticians such as Baudrillard and Barthes, it is in the manipulation of signs that a culture betrays its deeper epistemic structure, then for Baudrillard it is the American smile with its perfect dentition that is synonymous with the publicity image that provides the model of semiosis in the capitalist democratic episteme. Yeah, and so this is we're getting back to the Donald Trump stuff. For the publicity process in promoting the image of a product, Jane soft drink media star, as we were discussing earlier, attempts to pass off the same as different merely through marketing and packaging. The process it employs is paradoxical since it involves both blandness and difference. The blandness lies in the physical presentation of the object through the sign, regularity, smoothness, a certain transparency. The difference is added through the suggestion of some mythical association, the cowboy, Yankee vigor, the American Venus. In a society of democratic uniformity, this process quickly becomes extended to the whole system of sign exchange and meaning creation, one which the cinematographic, televisual, and most recently computer electronic media have massively facilitated. So, as Baudrillard notes, the U.S. president can be a former B-movie cowboy star, his wife a former sex kitten, the photogenic smiles bearing no relation to their political or social functions. And so here we are back in our reality. As is the case with Barthes' take on the sign, though for different reasons, Baudrillard's analysis of the smile also leads to the conclusion that it is the signifier of a void. The void in Baudrillard's case, however, is not that arrived through the exercises of Buddhist spiritual asceticism, but it is rather a function of the general emptying of significance of signs with the capitalist consumer world. In the West, the sign is there to be consumed as a sign, but without an understanding of what is at stake in the signifying process, entering into and therefore potentially undermining the consumer process. Okay, so this is just being mean to us. Yeah, here in the West, we probably deserve this in America. But up here, as the author is saying, is that this smile we're not meant to understand. It's meant to signify something about this, like this grand culture that the Japanese have that we don't quite understand, and so we don't between this non-smile and this little smile is supposed to represent something like exotic and different and like conceptually good, like the epistemology and episteme. And when we come down to here, the smile that we have is phony and fake, and is also this sort of complex relation of capitalist undertaking, but there's nothing there other than the empty capitalism. Thanks, Baudrillard. The sign operates, therefore, for what it suggests at the level of the signifier without entering into any real contract as to what it will in fact deliver on the level of signified. It becomes, as Baudrillard says, the fiction of the material of the image. Your smile is not fake. Yeah, but this is like right there. Bumble bloop rage. That smile is real. America is a culture in which is a derisory object, a pair of jeans, a soft drink, a second-rate actress. It is through the publicity of process packaged and marketed, that is semiotized in such a way as to become an object of quasi-mythic significance. Yeah, so DeMarshall, what's up? Didn't he mean the yellow smile icon? I'd assume, well, who, DeMarshall? I'd assume that Bubba Bloop is meant himself when Bubba Bloop is saying his smile is not fake. I think Baudrillard is accusing all Americans of having fake smiles because it's part of our culture that we have to smile, and therefore it has no meaning to us. We're just doing it because that fits in with this grand system of signs that we have here in America, which is basically a capitalist just farce, I guess, in Baudrillard's fiction. Some sort of materialist fiction is basically how he's saying America is. yeah, we oversmile because of marketing. And I don't think he's wrong that we oversmile because of marketing. I mean, I'm sure a lot of people are smiling not because they're happy. In this respect, it is interesting to contrast Barthes' juxtaposition of photographs of a Japanese male successively serious and smiling with another another object of desire, the smile of Marilyn Monroe, as reproduced in Andy Warhol's silkscreen print, which appears on the cover of the French paperback edition of America. The first thing to say about the face of Marilyn Monroe is that, unlike Greta Garbo or Audrey Hepburn, as analyzed by Barthes in Mythologies, it represents neither idea nor event, but image. I mean, this is the Andy Warhol, and of course Andy Warhol is famous for the prints of multiple prints of the same face over and over, the same soup can over and over, and so of course it's sort of showing the material reproduction is sort of, that's where we've come from. Japan. I think Japan, for instance, undersmiles because they're taught to be respectful. Yeah. So yeah, there's definitely a huge difference in what we're doing in the West versus Japan culturally. Cinna Semiotics says, example of semiotics, I now say the word fascist. Now you read that different than the others watching now. Fascist. Yeah. The relation I have to chat is different than the relation the chatters have to chat. And so there's a whole different group of signs going on. Whole system is going down. I mean, I'm definitely fascist, clearly. So, continuing, yeah. For, as with the whole of American culture as analyzed by Baudrillar, Monroe's face is manipulated to operate cinematographically as a pure sign. Even before it appears in front of the camera, the face's basis in the biological real has been profoundly altered by plastic surgery to the chin, dyeing and permanently waving of the hair, and improved dentition makeup. The aim of the face is not to express personality or individuality, but to be photogenic. So Semiotics continues. So, same sign, same broadcast, and yet there is something esoteric about me offering that, you fascist. And Bubba Bloop says, you do have the power to ban us all. See? Please explain to them I'm not an asshole. No one here is an asshole. No one here is. We don't always understand each other, but no one here is being an asshole. Okay. Although I will say there is something a little trolly about these things. Like, the trolls are, in some sense, not operating quite often in good faith in chat. They're trying to do something, and they're trying to, use the power of science to operate in a certain way to get the chat to go their way, or to stir up whatever, to just stir the pot, really. And so in some sense, you can see trolls in chat as using the system of signs in chat to do certain things. I've made a promise. No, I mean, it's a joke. Ah! Okay. Yeah, so the concept of a troll not trolling, it's an ongoing joke. Well, yeah, but I wasn't accusing you of trolling. I didn't mean to say that. I meant to put that in earlier. But, the idea of trolling, it's something similar. You can do things in chat to stir the pot, and that's using the relationship of signs to, your own end. And so, this is kind of how it's go. Yeah. No, you're not trolling at all. I mean, I appreciate the commentary going on, because it's nice to have a discussion. But, no, it wasn't misunderstood. But it's just, yeah, in some sense, these are complicated things to say, look, we're talking about the paper, we're talking about how chat is asking about the paper, and then we're also doing things in chat. Want to become famous. Wow. Time out. Ig. Goodbye. Haven't had one of those in a while, but okay. That's my first. I didn't even ban that, but that's my first time out in a good while. Woo! See, troll is trying to do something not the same as have a discussion like we are in chat. Sometimes the universe just sort of works together. It's amazing. Continuing. Warhol's silkscreen print, by multiplying further the process of the image's mediatization before it is presented to the viewer consumer, both clarifies and extends the layer of semi-transparent metamorphoses that the image undergoes in its transformation from index to simulacrum. First, the black and white photo is transferred to a silkscreen image. Second, color is added. The deliberate lack of synchronization between it and the surface to which is the turtles all the way down. It's always the turtles all the way down. Second, color is added. The deliberate lack of synchronization between it and the surface to which it is applied, emphasizing the Ekara fissure between the makeup and face, photographic image, and silkscreen technique. The crude technicolor hues employed, turquoise, peroxide, yellow, geranium red, adding to it the image's artificiality. Third, the image is transferred to the canvas where it receives the ideological gloss of the connotation work of art. At the same time, the image is multiplied so that it appears like a series of temporarily arrested frames from a moving picture of film. What Warhol reproduces in visual terms is then exactly the process Baudrillard identifies in American sign culture, the signifier as a series of transparent layers which themselves simultaneously construct and occlude the signified, leaving the latter virtually divorced from the object to which the sign, as combined signifier and signified, supposedly refers. In this way, the consumer grasps a sign that is practically auto-semiotic or hyperreal, since it minimizes the interpretive process while simultaneously mimicking and blocking access to the real. And this is the turtles all the way down. That's exactly right. This is turtles all the way down right here. This is where we're going. Baudrillard's project in America is to apply this model to the whole of American culture and geography, which he sees as being hyperreal in all its aspects. This is because there is no part of America or its culture that has not already been experienced televisually, cinematographically, or in some other popular mediatized form by the European traveler, for whom it is impossible for the real as encountered in America to dislodge the hyperreal of its previous media representations, or rather simulations. Everything is taken up again by simulation. Landscapes by photography, women by sexual scenarios, thought by writing, terrorism by fashion and the media, events by TV. Things seem only to exist in this strange manner. One wonders if the world itself exists only as a function of the publicity it can be used for in another world. Yeah. So, this is the, it's not turtles all the way down, it's publicity all the way down, is what he's saying right here. Right there. Publicity all the way down. Okay, so this was, I guess, the Baudrillard section. So we started off with the Roland Barthes. Roland Barthes has the understanding of the sign and the foreign episteme because it has a grand culture behind it that's different from us. And so that means, like, there's something we don't understand behind the smile of the Japanese actor, in the image above, because there's a history and a culture that's beyond our just like the traveler's grasp. Just a passing encounter with the Japanese will not explain Japanese culture. Now, then we've also then got the smile, according to Baudrillard, that is devoid of any meaning, so it only exists as a smile because the capitalism has reduced it to just publicity, and there's nothing of substance beyond it outside of the publicity it can generate. Turtles all the way down. Publicity turtles all the way down. And so now we're going to move on to Michel Boutour. I do not know how to say that, I apologize. A similar approach is followed in Michel Boutour's novel Mobile, published in 1962, which brings together what Baudrillard refers to as, more French, I don't read, I apologize, many of the semiotic issues travel writing raises. For Mobile, subtitled Some Representation of the United States, is a synthetic take on America in which the various levels of apprehension, semiotic, sociological, anthropological, historical, natural historical, are expressed as separate but intertwining strands in a text which unfolds like a map before the reader. The episteme underlying modern American culture and society is thus presented as a gradual unfolding archaeology, one constituted by Native Amerindian myths, the utopian or pragmatic ideals of the European founding fathers, the traditions and aspirations of Black Americans, and the diverse elements that make up the melting pot of the European national racial types. Okay, so now we've moved on to something completely different. We're going to say it's not the foreign culture, it's not the being devoid of culture, it's being overly, the hopes and dreams of an entire country are beyond us. And so it's an aspirational smile, and we don't even know what we're aspiring to. Okay, so how does this one work? Yeah, and like I said, anyone out there, please ask me questions. We're getting towards the end of this, so maybe I understand this a little bit better. Maybe not, but whatever. Boutour's primary concern is with difference as experienced through signs, in particular the way the signifier fascinates the foreign traveler. Much of the material of mobile is thus not provided directly by objects, but almost always through the intermediary of signs: road signs, car marks, petrol station signs, neon signs, texts, whether Sears, Roebuck & Co. catalogs, historical tracts, or documents relating to American Indians, natural history illustrations, the magnificent plates of John James Audubon's Birds of America, 1854, and other visual and written sources. As a whole, the novel anticipates both the semiotic approach and the thematic orientation of Barthes and Baudrillard's travel writings. And, once again, as with Barthes and Baudrillard, it is the smile as sign that flashes its ambiguous promise. You know, it's funny, Semiotics, like when, or maybe it was, I think it was you at the beginning, when we started reading this. We were trying to figure out what exactly they meant by smile, and it's like this is sort of showing the different kinds of ways you can analyze smile. And so, and they're very different in some sense. It's the theme, of course, is that you can't, there's no one way to analyze a smile, but the very different, cultural, historical thing, or this sort of capitalist thing, it comes off differently. So, a smile that flashes its ambiguous promise seems like the theme of the paper. The mystery of it is exactly the point. We need that mysterious knowledge to exist, so if it doesn't, we just assume it's behind the smile. And it's true, people do indeed have to wonder about what is behind each other's smiles. Yeah, that's absolutely right. I just was thinking, what's your name? With the look from back in the day. She, tilted her head in a certain way, and that was she had this look. What was the ambiguous promise of that look? The smile, that look. It's that's sort of important. A lot of this reminds me of my old sociology classes. Yeah, this stuff has definitely influenced sociology. First appearing on page 118, it reappears on the same page. Like living Irving Goffman talking about how we were all actors on stage. Yep, definitely part of it's all in the This stuff is these guys were, I think, thinking more. I don't know if they were dealing more anthropologically or sociologically, but it's all this stuff got sort of pulled into sociology. To Saussure, detachable Saussure of the human understanding of our enterprise. Okay. Okay, so I'm sorry about all this French, which I don't know. Well, from page 130, the smile, as in Baudrillard's America, becomes a sign of political propaganda. Hillary Clinton. Okay. Yeah, see, regarding Miss Kennedy, regards Mr. Nixon, all these things. And so on until the smile image is replaced by a more glamorous incarnation in the form of neon signs of Hollywood stars, the first of whom, of course, is Marilyn Monroe. The illuminating visage of Marilyn Monroe, followed by that of Jane Mansfield, Rita Hayworth, and many others in the 50s, stars of both sexes. To these are added the omnipresent advertising signs, Coca-Cola, Pepsi-Cola, Lucky Strike, oil companies, together with the modern mythology of American car types, which are obsessively identified as they pass at regular intervals through the text. But the major innovation of Boutour's style and mobile is to express on the level of the text itself in a manner similar to Barthes, but much more homogeneously and systematically. You gotta go. All right, stop. Thanks for stopping by, Bubba Bloop. Bye, Bloop. The multiple categories and levels of signifiers that he encounters in his American travels. So, what's going on here? We've got a systematization going on here. Interesting. Okay. The Roman capitals express the essential geographical indicators of a trans-American itinerary, pinpointing the names of states and major cities. Text in lowercase Romans usually indicates general information of current validity, route directions, petrol stations, cars encountered, territories crossed, while lowercase italics indicate historical and cultural information. This fragmentary, hierarchized presentation of the typographical systems reflects the fleeting impressions of the real experience of a strange landscape, and the inclusion of chunks of reference text reflects a traveler's habits of consultation of guidebooks, catalogs, and other sources of information. Fragments of micro-narrative, of ambiguous status, passing fantasies of the narrator, reconstructions of scenes observed, etc., add further to the patchwork of discursive strategies. So here, this is what I was saying earlier, I think is actually what's going on here. That this author, the Boutour, is taking, there's so much to draw in any given spot that you can't actually get a unified whole. You can't take all of it together. So you've got me talking, you've got my beer here, you've got like the image of Sam Adams, the historical thing there on that. Then you've got all this other stuff going on, and the idea that you're going to be able to put all of this together to actually understand America is sort of like, that's a crazy idea. How could you take all these things, all these like maps and like travel guides and like things like that you see along the way? There's just too much stuff going on for you to actually put it all together into one sort of one reference that like this is America. Although of course you could go listen to the Childish Gambino song and then you get everything. What the text by Barthes, Baudrillar, and Boutour show us. Okay, yeah, so that was it. This is the point, I guess, and this is the wrap up. Yeah, page 16 of 19. We're getting towards the end. So what the text by Barthes, Baudrillar, and Boutour show us the way some modern travel writing, particularly at that which engages directly with the theoretical issues at stake in such an enterprise, is as much concerned with the taking the sign back to its source as with discovering or fully inhabiting the objective world of the other. The other can only be authentically grasped when the same converts itself into it, a process involving a huge investment of time and effort in linguistic and cultural transformation, the outcome of which inevitably involves a loss of difference, since knowledge rings the death knell of the exotic. The aim of such travel writing becomes thus to experience the sign of the other more fully in itself as much as for what it says about its object. Hence the fascination with the signifier, for how the fascination of signs lies no longer so much in what they represent, but in how they do it. In an increasingly uniform and democratic world, difference is sought not so much in the objects themselves, genes, cars, media stars, as in the signs through which they transmit or advertise themselves to us, not so much in the concepts or signifies they propose to suggest happiness, prosperity, sex appeal, as in the way the signifiers fascinate or seduce, if only momentarily, the consumer. All right, so this is actually really sort of important for all of us influencers on, yes, these are the evolved haikus. When haikus invoke, I'm thinking this is more like when haikus become much more, not invoke, but I was going to say, like what we've got all the influencers who they're trying to get all these people like to follow for them. I'm going to say something about, because like, how do influencers and like sort of people on like Twitch get people to like watch them? They're not advertising themselves to us, but they, so much in the concepts of these things as in the way they go about doing it. And so it's like in some sense they're advertising how they like this sort of the attitude, like how they encounter stuff, and that's more important. And so you can't, it's like the way they're looking at stuff. That's the episteme here. Is that not profound? Well, this is an interesting paper. I mean, I don't know what's really profound or not, but like the interesting way of trying to understand like why do certain people attract huge followings. It's not because they're rich or they have like fancy things. I mean, people try to do that, and people like jeans, cars, and media stars, but sort of in some sense, how are they, what is it about them that makes people interested in them? See what you did with the progressive revelation of the haiku? Yes, it was very good. But how do we explain this exactly? We have to explain this as some sort of encapsulation of the semiotics into the attitude. going on here. And that's kind of the fascination with the signifier. The fascination of signs no longer so much in what they represent, but in how they do it. So it's like how you go about dealing with the world. And that's what we can then latch onto. Okay. The travel writings of Barthes, Baudrillar, and Boutour thus... And it was clever with the haiku. You were right. Okay. The travel writings of Barthes, Baudrillar, and Boutour thus brings us to reflect on the issues at stake in the signifying process. And this is what I said earlier. It's the process. Is a process philosophy going on here. Both in the modern capitalistic and post-industrial world... Oh, this is the end. And the fast-reading, or rather fast-changing, exotic world of the other. I just wrote that live, so it worked out because of the timing morphed radically. And that's what happens sometimes. Sometimes you get everything working together. The fast receding, or rather fast changing, exotic world of the other. So yeah, since the world is changing and it kind of exists in some sort of state that we can't, we can't understand everything. But what we can do is how we can go about this, and that sort of is how we can sort of have something to latch onto, is that we sort of think some people or there's some stories that do explain how to grasp the world in a better way, and that in some sense is good. And mulling it over with the haiku, the progressive revelation of the haiku, as Semiotics is saying in chat, that in some sense is the way the travel writing is supposed to operate. Okay, and that's it for this paper. Again, I apologize for my lack of French. Looks like it would have been helpful here. Yeah, and so, as I was saying earlier, I do like to mention, what do I know about this? Well, I can see the page numbers. I don't know if you can see it very small. It's right here at the bottom. So I know I'm getting close to the end, but I don't always know exactly where I'm at. And so, I saw the smile of the sign here, and I was like, okay, there's more, and then it was notes. I was like, oh, the end, okay. So, I mean, this is sort of I don't know what the... in some sense, I don't know what the author's final point's going to be. And so I'm always sort of just waiting for the end and what's going to be their punchline. And I don't always know. It's funny. Sometimes the authors are very clear when I read papers, and sometimes I hit the end and I'm just like, wait, there should be more. And sometimes I'm just I don't know. This one was fine. It was pretty clear because this right here, what the text of Barthes, Baudrillar, and Boutour show us, this was a obviously concluding paragraph, or starting the conclusion. Yeah. We all learned from the ambiguity. Well, I hope so. I don't always know what I learn. Okay, so let's see. What can we say about this paper, though? Alright, so the structure of the paper, as I've said before, the author focused on three authors, went through three different ways of understanding signs in semiotics and how they have power in terms of travel writing. So, the Barthes analyzed what we don't understand and what we are sort of enamored with, allured by, is sort of the depth of culture we don't understand. Baudrillar emphasized that the lack of culture can also be sort of overwhelming and just sort of a system of signs that have no referent. And then Boutour argues or wrote in a way that explains, that shows that even if we do have some sort of engagement with a culture or a system, there's always too many things going on at any given point for us to really get at what is the referent underneath it. So you can write in a way, or you can understand another culture in a way that you might have inroads here and there, but you're not actually going to have, you can't get a whole picture. It's just not possible. So it's too many systems interacting. And so how do we understand the smile? Again, you can't understand it in Barthes. You completely understand it in Baudrillar, but it's meaningless. And in Boutour, it's just it's going in too many directions. There's too many different kinds of smiles. So, okay. And so, what do we get out of this, though, is the how. These different ways of analyzing the world is what we're getting out of these hows. Travel writing is an evolved mythology, is the point, I think. Yeah, I think the author started off kind of with that in mind. Yeah, that's right. So the question, and then like, what was this mythology? Is analyzed through the three different sort of ways of doing the three B's here: Barthes, Baudrillar, and Boutour. So these are sort of the gods of like or the different sort of yeah, the people on Olympus here is how the author Scott is analyzing travel writing. So the myth of travel writing, or the myth of the world almost, via travel writing. Okay, so let's see. Anything else to say? Yeah. So the ambiguous promise is sort of what is coming out of this. The Odyssey. Mm-hmm. So. Uh, Former B movie cowboy. Yeah, the B movie star is basically where we're at in America. Not even B. It was like a B minus star we have. So. Okay. Any last questions? I don't have a whole lot more to say. As I said, semiotics is not my thing. It's an interesting topic, and I have looked at it mostly only with respect to rhetoric. And so rhetoric is interesting to me, but I have not read semiotics on its own. And so the question of like, what do I actually understand about going when I come into this is it's I'm a little shaky, which is fine. I can't know everything. So this is an interesting thing. Mathematics came to Europe through the training in memes about where is this mysterious system came from. It's not that mysterious. There's a history of math. Our numbers actually come from India, even though they're called Arabic numbers. It's the Arabs got it from India, and then we got it from the Arabs, so we call our numbers Arabic, even though they're from India. Trading in memes. But yeah, it's the Indian number system. And then the Greeks, of course, did their own math. But the history of math is very interesting on its own. There's a great book I read called like the history of zero, and then there's the history of probability, which I work on myself. Oh, well, I'm happy to have. I'm glad you suggested it. This is not something I normally read, and so it's like I'm just trying to understand a lot of this stuff myself. And I know I look at this through. I'm an analytically trained philosopher, and so I look at this stuff a lot of times in terms of the analytic philosophy. But I try to be charitable. Yeah, well, I will say a lot of the semiotic stuff is more fun than analytic philosophy. Uh, so, okay, I should learn French. But that's it for now. I don't have a whole lot more to say. It's just this question of episteme and the power of knowledge systems that we don't have is an interesting question. Do I think actually the story was mysterious at first, math spread because the story of math spread first? Oh, algebra. Okay. Yeah. People. Okay, and that stuff. Yeah, yeah. There's interesting stories about people and knowing about different systems before they actually knew the systems, and that's cool stuff though too. What was I about to say? Oh yeah, what does the power of knowledge or like mysterious knowledge have over us, and why is travel writing a good way to go about this? And that's an interesting question. What can travel writing teach epistemologists because it does deal with epistemology in this different way? And that would be an interesting question from even an analytic perspective. So, it was a nice paper. I think it was pretty well written, in terms of covering a lot of sort of ground because it's got three big authors in it, and so to have all of those people in one essay and make a point across all three of them is nicely done. Now, do I know if this author was fair to these authors? No, not at all. I wouldn't know that in the least. I mean, I from the little I understand of them, I think the gloss was okay, but do I know that? No. Um, Have a good night, Cine Semiotics. Thanks for stopping by and suggesting the paper. It was fun. And yeah, I'm going to cut out 2, and so I will be back soon, hopefully in the next few days. You're not 10 minus 7, so you're 3. Okay. But yeah, that's it for now, and I will see you all soon. Goodbye.